2026 sees me travel the length and breadth of England to run a marathon per week in each of its 39 historic counties. Why? To raise funds for Tommy's, the charity that does incredible work to try to end the heartbreak of baby loss. I'll be joined each week by someone who has their own story of loss, their own rollercoaster journey, their own reason to be there. This podcast shares those stories in the hope that they can bring awareness to an often undiscussed topic and even, perhaps, a flicker of light in someone's darkness. You can follow the runs, the stories, and donate to the cause at marathonsformiracles.com. Enjoy. Hello, welcome to the next episode of Marathons for Miracles. We're on to week 16. I'm not going to say we're flying along this week because my wife started taking the piss out of me for it. But we come off the back of a great week in Shropshire for our home leg. Hopefully you've seen some of the footage from that weekend. It was nice to be close to home. But this weekend we go not so close to home. Again, we're heading down to the south coast. I'm going to be running the Brighton Marathon this weekend, but exciting in other ways because it's our first proper marathon, proper event. So 12,500 people keeping us company. So exciting from that regard. We're going to a run of sort of our marathon majors over the next few weeks. Equally exciting to be joined by Bobby this week, who came to the challenge in a slightly roundabout way, which we'll touch on later. But Bobby is the husband of Clemmie, who was at university in Sydney with my wife, Amy. So we've known these guys for a while. And this story in particular is very close to home. And was a very emotional time, obviously for Bobby and Clemmie, but also for us as well as a family and a friendship group. So thank you, Bobby, for agreeing to run with me eventually. And also for coming on this evening. It's great to have you on.
Thank you so much.
We will jump in and start in our usual fashion by asking Bobby, what is it that leads you to be involved with Marathons for Miracles and Tommy's as a charity?
Thanks, Olly. And thanks for the intro. That was very nice. So our story, I suppose, started back in 2022. We have a son called Felix. He was born fairly normal pregnancy as they go. There's usual ups and downs, but nothing too remarkable. Went full term. He had an emergency C-section to get him out. He was shifting very quickly. He's quite a lazy boy now, so it was probably just that more than anything. So it's great. We've got had a baby boy, and then sort of 2 years down the track, the usual sort of thoughts about expanding the family, and we started trying in late 2024. Initially, we did not late 24, late 23. And then initially, we did actually get pregnant in February 24. But we had a very early miscarriage, which was a bit of a shock and upsetting at the time. But it was, without kind of sort of going over the severity of miscarriage, it was kind of, we wanted to move on, carry on best we could. It didn't naturally come, but then in late August, we did fall pregnant again. It was a little bit of a shock because sort of about 2 weeks prior to us finding out that we were pregnant, Clemmie actually had what she thought was her period, so quite a lot of blood. So it was kind of like, at the time, it was like sad, another month, all that kind of doom and gloom a bit. And then 2 weeks later, she sort of felt some of the symptoms and just thought, what the hell, I'll go and have a pregnancy test. And we find out that we're pregnant, and overjoyed, a bit confused about what happened, but onwards and upwards.
Yeah,
all good. Then at 11 weeks, she started bleeding. At the time, what we thought was quite heavily, but we'll learn without a spoiler alert to be it's probably quite moderate. We went into St Thomas's A&E. Was seen um, relatively quickly for 11 p.m. on bonfire night, which could have been an absolute shocker. We had scan, heartbeat, all that kind of stuff. All good, just unsure about bleeding, but what they saw was a sub chronic hematoma in the womb at the time. Sort of then we all madly went Googling and all that kind of stuff to work out what it was, what that meant. But we were sent away with, you're coming back next week for your 12-week scan. So hold on, let's see what happens. No more bleeding between then and the 12 weeks. Went back, obviously a bit of a nervous scan. Again, heartbeat, growth, all those kind of good things from the fetus to baby. And we were told that the hematoma had shrunk. So, more positivity, feeling good about life, or better about life, not good, but better. Still worries and all that.
So just quickly, that hematoma, you said you sort of went off and Googled what it meant and probably spoke to the midwives and stuff about what does that mean?
It's a gathering of blood within a womb, a bruise or something. I think it's, from our understanding, I'm sure there's some medical people will tell me we know lots about it, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of knowledge about why it happens, what happens to it. Some of the time it goes away and just settles down itself. Some of the time it stays and is a bit of a nuisance. So there's not too much knowledge about why it happens, but it does happen.
Another one of those things that
yeah, exactly. It's one of those things where and that's been the amazement of my journey, is how little we know about bringing life into the world. It's kind of crazy, but you get why you don't want to sort of practice medicine on a pregnant lady, basically.
Yeah.
It's obviously a very emotional and very important thing. But yeah, so this hematoma was there. It was supposedly shrinking. So we came back and take it easy, all that kind of stuff, as much as you can with a 2-year-old as well. Then we get sort of 18 weeks on the day. Clemmie starts bleeding heavily, which she hadn't bled at all between 11 and 18 weeks. She same sort of thing. We went into Ep15 at the time for scans and because she was 18 weeks, we had no idea, but because she was 18 weeks, that was the sort of the policy was then to keep her in, to admit her. So she went straight to antenatal wards that day. Again, scanned, baby doing fine, heartbeat, growth, all that kind of stuff. Hematoma there, still bleeding was quite bad, really bad, but didn't seem to be causing any irritation or harm to the baby.
Yeah.
Again, not a lot of knowledge about why she was bleeding. He was on the ward, the antenatal ward, for a while, and then came home. I mean, it was kind of a bit of a shock getting in it. We just thought they would go in and examine and help and explain, or it could be even worse. But then for her to stay in kind of turns your world a bit upside down, because you just you want a home, you want a safe, which you think is safe with you, rather than with really intelligent doctors in a hospital.
Of course.
And you've got 2-year-old, got work, got all that kind of stuff. So it's just the world just turns upside down a little bit.
Yeah.
And then basically over the next 5 to 6 weeks, she was discharged from hospital and then readmitted 5 times. So she would stop bleeding. And basically she had to stop bleeding for a period of time. I can't quite remember, but it was a good sort of 6 hours or overnight or 24 hours before they would let her leave, quite rightly. but those times just felt really frustrating because you finally stopped bleeding, and then again you just wanted that home. She just wanted to be with Felix, our 2-year-old. Just one of those weird times where we were in and out of hospital. Usually there could be like a 24-hour gap, then back bleeding heavily again. Uh, you know, when I say heavily, I really do mean heavily. It's quite, I'm quite immune to it now, but to begin with, it was quite shocking and worrying. But each time we went back, again, baby, absolutely fine, heartbeat, growth, um, just this blood. They could see hematomas sometimes. They could see two sometimes. They could see none sometimes. It was, again, the scans are quite inconclusive sometimes, and it depends on what certain people are looking at.
Yeah.
But effectively, that's what we were living. This was in December. So there was lots going on. There was lots of plans, lots of where we were going to spend Christmas, all that kind of stuff. Things that you think are so important and then are so immaterial now looking back. You're kind of like, it doesn't matter. But we ended up, there was a um, I was trying to organise where we were having Christmas. We were meant to go back to her parents' house down in Kent near Tunbridge Wells, entire family there. And the reason it was so important that we went down there is sort of roughly the same time as we learned that we were pregnant. Unfortunately, her father developed a tumour in his brain, which was kind of quite aggressive. Treatment wasn't superb, and therefore is I was desperate to get them all back together again.
Yeah, of course.
And so I was working out how long to get to Pembury Hospital, this Tunbridge Wells. And midwives were quite adamant for her to stay in. I was kind of explaining why, and then I was like, we're 18 minutes away from for an ambulance to come, and the doctor just cut in and went, "You don't want to wait for an ambulance. You need to get in the car straight away." That sort of hit home that we really need to stay in London. So luckily we were discharged for Christmas Day, and we did get the family came up to our brother's house, and we managed to have Christmas all together. But then unfortunately she started bleeding again, and we were back in Boxing Day, or she was back in Boxing Day. So it was just this crazy time of year where trying to ferry our 2-year-old around, try to make his life fun at Christmas,
Yeah.
the wider family, all that kind of stuff. Her family, her mum and brothers were dealing with a dad as well at the time, which added further stress um, to everyone. And at various times she came out, came back, and then I think it was around, I can't remember the exact date, she started feeling like she was having contractions in early January, and they thought she was sort of dilating, having contractions, all that kind of stuff. But then it's weirdly sort of settled down for a while. She was admitted again. She was on a kind of a host of drugs, I suppose, as well, to help calm things down. We And things just naturally slowed down. We saw some of the same doctors that had seen us before Christmas who said they didn't think she'd be in this position. But we were where we were. Things really had calmed down when we were in the hospital that time. But then I think one of the drugs, they can't give you forever. They have to wean you off it,
Yeah.
or just stop it really. And I went home that evening just after she had stopped it. I suppose the evening of the 11th of January, and and when I said bye to her, I could tell that she was a bit worried, a bit concerned, but it was all good. I was going to be back at 8 o'clock. Felix was down at my parents', all that kind of stuff. And then went to bed, tried to go to bed straight away, kind of packed back, got the Tupperware for food the next day, all that kind of stuff, ready to go. And then I was woken up just before kind of 1 o'clock in the morning with her calling me, telling me to come because contraction started and she was going to give birth. So this is where you're kind of waiting for the Uber to come. It's about 20 minutes from Brixton to St Thomas's, and you can't in the lap of the gods. But it was 20 minutes where we were there out the Uber. I think I arrived. By the time I arrived and found the door, there was only one door open. So I knew St Thomas's by the back of my hand. But try and get at 1:30 in the morning is quite difficult. And then if you've ever been in that hospital, the lifts are just a joke. They just take forever. So once I kind of managed to get to the floor and was sprinting down the corridors up to her room, and there were, I don't know, in my head, there was 15 people in there. There was a load of people with her on one side. And there were a load of people with fibrous resuscitator. So I had missed the birth of Phoebe, our daughter. It was quite hard to take. But she was so tiny that she just came out so quickly. So she was born at 1:27. So I got there about 1:35 or so in the morning. And it was a crazy scene. In there, doctors were still working on Clem, try and kind of get all the placenta tissue out and that sort of thing. And Phoebe had been born. She was born still in the sack. And what had happened is basically there was a placental abruption, so it had come away, and that induced the labour to get Phoebe out of Clemmie. And the doctors worked on Phoebe as much as they could in the room, and then had to transfer her down to NICU. So we did the horrible.
How far into the pregnancy are we at this stage, Bobby? What?
Sorry, yeah.
how
So
we-
Phoebe was born 23 weeks and 5 days. And I say the 5 days again. You're going on Doctor Google or charities like Tommy's and Born. And when we were in there, you're literally looking at the outcome, and every day staying inside the mother is so important. And every week it was kind of, in early January, it was like you were chalking off every day and working in days and weeks. So yeah, Phoebe was tiny. She weighed 710 grams, so less than a kilo. She 1 pound 6 ounces, I think, 1 pound 7 ounces. So tiny thing, but she was alive. She was born alive. She was living, albeit with a lot of help from the doctors, trying to just establish airways, get the breathing, get circulation stable before she could head down to NICU, basically, where they could do more for her. So then you've got that horrible choice, which I think I've heard on your podcast before. Where do you go? Who do you want to stay with your wife, who's trauma, like probably trauma, incredible thing. Birthing a child, but also like exceptionally worried about her child, and you've got to go with her. But it's it's just a horrible moment leaving Clemmie, but just a really important moment in my life in terms of staying with Phoebe and doing what I could with her. So yeah, we went down to NICU, and the doctors, I mean, you don't want to bother them or disturb them, and you're in a bit of a daze. The nurses can see what kind of state you're in and sort of try and keep you away, but want you to show what's going on. So it's it's a hell of an operation that goes on down there. They're pretty incredible people. They kind of said to me, "Do you want to have a tour of NICU, and I just did the terribly British thing of politely accepting their invitation, uh, which I really didn't want to do, and I was just, my mind was somewhere else. And we sort of walked around for a bit, and then she said, "Actually, why don't it's 2 o'clock, 2:30 in the morning. When we go back upstairs, we'll let you know what happens." For all honesty, some of the communication between some of the doctors in the room before NICU kind of sort of prepared me for what's going on. At that stage, actually, NICU was when I found out that she was a girl. So that was an amazing piece of news, coming back upstairs and telling Candy that we had a girl. And I remember that. That was awesome. Actually, she was really happy, and also really surprised because we were convinced it would be another boy. I don't know why. I can't really remember why, but it's, again, completely irrelevant. But again, that was kind of in a very weird, horrendous night. It was just a nice moment. So then we sort of slept for a bit, or tried to sleep. I think Clemmie did. She was exhausted, and I was just, again, stuck on my phone, Googling the whole thing. And at that stage, about 5 a.m., I think it was, the doctors basically came up and told us that Phoebe had, when the placenta ruptured, basically the blood had drained, a lot of blood had drained out of her tiny body. I mean, she was already very small, so the amount of blood that was in her body at the time, for that kind of 20 minutes wasn't enough. When they were initially working on her, they couldn't actually hear a heartbeat because it was it's not because there wasn't a heartbeat. There was a heartbeat, but there was just not enough blood pressure. There wasn't enough blood in her that to kind of actually make a beat, if you like. And therefore, they told us the reality of the situation, and then you've got to make a decision on whether to kind of carry on against that sort of advice, if you like. It's not, I don't know what the doctor would call it. It's not advice. It's information. And Clemmie and I made the decision that it was unfair on Phoebe to kind of be put through any more trauma or pain. So we agreed to stop the tubes, and we both got to go down to NICU, and basically we spent an hour with her as the doctors removed all the medical, like, lines and all that kind of stuff. And we got to cuddle her and hold her, and which was really nice. And I think she quite enjoyed it because she stayed with us a surprisingly long time, according to the doctors, which was quite funny. But it was nice. It was a nice moment, although it was so upsetting and so difficult, I suppose. And yeah, and then she eventually passed away, kind of about 6:30, about 5 hours. So she lived for 5 hours. The one thing that I always remember is the NICU team at St Thomas's were just all so respectful. They all stood there till the end. They didn't leave. They didn't go and work anywhere else. This was 6:30 in the morning. They'd been working for God knows how long before they had to deal with Phoebe. And they all stood there exceptionally professionally and respectfully. And it means a lot to me. That was then we were taken back upstairs. You're put into the butterfly suite, which is a weird thing in there. It's your own room. You're I'm allowed to stay, which usually you're not. There's a double bed there for you and stuff like that. But then you're given the option of, being with Phoebe, being with her, trying to make memories with her, trying to trying to normalize her life or try to, I don't know, recognize her life. So we spent a bit of time trying to do that, but you just don't know what you're doing. You don't know whether it's the right thing to do. You don't know if you're being disrespectful, horrible. Then if you don't do it, you don't know if you're missing out. So it was just, it was a weird time, but quite a special time in a weird way, being with her. So we spent sort of the day, if you like, with her. And then we said goodbye to her about 7 o'clock that evening. Um, and then that was basically, we stayed in overnight, and then we eventually managed to get home. And I was just desperate to get home. I just didn't want to be in that suite or talk to people, amazing midwives and
I know
bereavement
that feeling.
midwives, all that. But again, I just become terribly polite, British and polite, and welcome everyone in. But inside my gut, I just wanted to be at home. I just wanted to be around people that truly loved us, basically, like our close family. I just wanted them around me, not everyone else. So then we came home, which was again just so difficult. Felix was here. I mean, I know that your the word on your podcast that you've most heard is lucky, but I do feel lucky that we had Felix. He made us get up in the morning.
It's in the name.
Yeah, exactly. Isn't it? He made us get up in the morning. We had to take him to nursery. We had to get food in. You had to be there for him. So he gave us, the purpose to get through the next weeks, months, years, which was really important. Yeah, it just it just came back to being so important, just being us as a three, if you like.
Quite a few weeks, Bobby.
Yeah,
all in all,
I mean,
you
we had
have a breather for a second.
Yeah,
when you need it. I remember hearing about all of this. Obviously, we knew that Clemmie had gone into hospital a few times, and with what we'd had and what we'd been through, you're aware of the worst and you hope for the best. And then I was sitting in this very spot, and Amy popped her head up at the bottom of the stairs and said that Phoebe had been born, but that she'd passed away. And I sat here and cried my eyes out. I think I cried. I was on and off calls with work, and I just cried all day. It was heartbreaking, and well done for getting through that story, because that was it was tough for me. So God knows how it was for you.
I mean, I don't know if I told it particularly well, because
I think you told it fantastically, Bobby. I think you told it fantastically. I don't think there is a bad way to tell it in that detail. One minute you had a daughter, and the next minute you didn't, and I just can't imagine. I can't imagine. And for those listening, and for those who have been following the challenge and have followed sort of previous podcasts that I've done, I've sort of outlined how Amy and I had our loss in 22. We then sort of, more people approached us off the back of it, and sort of you hear more stories, and so you become increasingly aware of what's going on. We then got pregnant again with Poppy, and so we had that to focus on, and Poppy was born happily and healthily, and then we started to reflect, I guess, a bit more on what had happened. And as I've said a few times, I was thinking about doing something to support Tommy's and to support those going through similar things. It'd been mulling around in the back of my head. What happened to you and Clemmie and with Phoebe is what triggered this year. It really hit us, and it was at that point that I realized that we needed to do something, and we needed to do something significant. So for anyone who's wondering, it's Phoebe's fault. All of this is Phoebe's fault. You may have only been here for a few hours, but she's certainly had a big impact. So
thank you.
Right. We'll try and put together a podcast episode now of some description. One thing I wanted to ask about, sort of listening to that story, Clemmie was obviously in and out of hospital 5 or 6 times, as you said, and the bleeding stopped and the bleeding started. And how aware were you, or how confident were the doctors throughout the process that they sort of knew what was going on? Did they know what the cause was? Did they know what was causing the bleeding, or was it just a case of you're bleeding, we need to keep an eye on you, and we need to be?
Yeah, it was the latter, really. Nobody really knew why. These hematomas were obviously part of it. There's discussion about whether the emergency C-section scarring from Felix maybe even caused the hematomas, irritated them. But nobody ever really knew why. She was, wanted to get back to see Felix. She was wanting to be at home. Being on a ward with ladies that are kind of having to all different issues with their pregnancy, but having to be kept in for various different reasons is just again eye-opening, mind-blowing, not very nice, all that kind of stuff together. And I just wanted to be at home. You kind of, once you stop bleeding for 24 hours or 12 hours, you're like, get the doctor in, we're fine, can we go? But I think in the reality, when you look back, it's just, nobody really knew what was going on. She'd lost a hell of a lot of blood to the point where she had a transfusion in the antenatal ward. So that's the amount she was bleeding over those 5 weeks. So she was obviously quite she was a very known case. Like everyone seemed to know her. In St Thomas's in kind of the antenatal wards or the different kind of emergency entrances.
Yes, yeah. I guess with all of that, was it a case of we don't know but we think it's okay, or we don't know but we're quite concerned? And I guess the driver of my question is, were you suspecting the worst through all that time, or were you optimistic that hopefully everything's going to be okay?
So so the doctors were sort of, we don't know what it is, sit tight, you just got to look after yourself, it is well. I think Clemmie's naturally probably a bit more pessimistic about sort of health, should I say, and especially in this situation. And if you're bleeding that much and you've got a lot of blood in your hands, then you're gonna be in that way. I suppose I was deep down concerned, but I felt I had to play the optimistic card. I had to be the joker, the happy person to keep morale up, and well, that's what I felt my job was, without kind of gaslighting. I was kind of like, more, let's be positive about it. You know, these things happen. There's plenty of people that carry on and give birth with hematomas. At the time was our big worry, and people carry on. It's annoying, it's draining, but we can do this, and it'll be worth it when we get to May, which was our due date. And this was, we sat here in December and January talking about it. So much so, you sort of get into a routine, you get into a rhythm, and you actually normalise what's going on a little bit. As I said, the bleeding wasn't, well, it was, I would say, more irritating and annoying than actually concerning by the sort of the middle of it to the end of it. Clemmie just wanted to be home, or she wanted to, I know she was just getting frustrated with her own body, I think, more than anything. And then I was just normalising it, whether it was work, Felix, making sure that he was in places and being looked after. And you kind of just go, okay, this is it. And we're in this till
this is how it is.
May
it is
the
strange, isn't it? It's
7th
strange how actually the fact that it's happening for a 5th or a 6th time in hindsight is probably should be more concerning. But in actual fact, because I remember when Amy miscarried, that was about she'd been in and out of hospital with bleeding like the entire pregnancy. And so actually strangely, the first few times were more worrying than the time that we actually miscarried. And there were times earlier on where we'd gone in and I thought, oh no, this is it. You know, we're losing this baby.
Yeah.
But actually, on the occasion that we went in with the miscarriage, we waltzed in, went to the usual place, went in for the scan. Oh, they're going to hook us up. There'll be a heartbeat. Da, da, da. No, there isn't. And it's actually, it does.
Yeah.
You can normalize it, can't you? You can get lulled into this. Okay, this is just how pregnancy is now.
Yeah. Yeah. It was very much for us, but I think deep down, I, you know, looked at not the necessary statistics, but the likely outcome was going to be some sort of prematurity.
Mm.
And that's what I've said before. It was all about the days, getting to day 7, and that was another week on the clock. And when you look at information from Tommy's or Bourne or whoever, they give you some pretty hard hitting facts about survival rates, disability rates. So you are literally counting days. So normalizing it, just chalk off another day, was all I was trying to do in my head, to get us there.
Yeah.
But in reality, we weren't in control.
Had they suggested that prematurity was a likely outcome from what was going on, or again, was there no?
No, just don't think. I think the doctors don't give you what the range of outcomes are, because again, I don't think they fully know a lot about it. Everyone's individual. Everyone's body's individually. They tell you things like sometimes this happens, and we're seeing the people back at 39 weeks, happy, easy pregnancy. So they always tell you that side of it, but then they leave the bad side sort of hanging. So that's for you to kind of work out the bad side, if you like. So I don't think there was a particular, we weren't given a choice. It was just what was going to happen with Pepper's body, really. And these hematomas or whatever that eventually irritated, and made that the placenta rupture, basically. Whatever it was, nobody really knows. And we've talked to Professor who's linked with Tommy's about it in depth. We've talked to the top guy at Chelsea and Westminster who's born and it does some amazing stuff. Both of them do amazing stuff. We've got private doctors involved. Nobody knows. Everyone's just kind of taking a guess, an educated guess about roughly what it could have been. I mean, ultimately for us, it happened, and there's nothing that we could have done to stop it happening. We weren't being reckless, and it is one of those things. But coming back to why we're doing this and what we're doing, it shouldn't be one of those things. And we don't know enough about pregnancy. We don't know enough about premature birth or miscarriage or fertility or any of these things. I have to admit, until this happened to me, I probably wasn't interested in the subject. It didn't come across my radar. It wasn't, I haven't been affected by anybody else. And even if it was, I haven't kind of maybe investigating it as much as I should have done. But when it happens to you, you kind of go, why don't we know more? We should know more. This is literally the essence of life. This is us, surviving as a human race. This is what we need to be doing. And we don't. And I get why we don't. We need to find out more. So this sort of stuff just shouldn't happen. Really shouldn't happen.
I'm with you on that one. I want to talk more about that side of things, but the one thing that's also stuck out throughout your story, which must have been almost impossible to navigate in some ways. Someone who has a 2-year-old myself, I know their demands and their needs. How did you even begin to juggle Felix through all of this, through not obviously the sort of 4 or 5 weeks leading up to January, but then also in the aftermath as well? of a little boy who would undoubtedly have been incredibly excited about his new little sibling.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first issue was so premature we hadn't even, and also since 11 weeks, since Clem started bleeding, we were sort of on eggshells anyway, and
Okay.
so it was far too early to kind of bother him with it. And being a 2-year-old, you wouldn't really understand it, I
Okay. Fair.
suppose. So, but in terms of juggling with him, I mean, he's very resilient. Children are very resilient. The one thing I would say is how good my work was, and how understanding, how empathetic they were. And I think the company does this really, really well with these sorts of situations. And they gave me time and space. Worked a lot from the hospital when I was there. I had to do drop off pretty much every single day. Certainly when Clemmie was in and out of hospital, but also then afterwards, quite rightly fancy going to a nursery where there's lots of other children, but also lots of other newborn babies, sort of new brothers and sisters, sort of come into nursery. So I was given space by work, which meant that I could be there for both Felix and but then also be able to still carry on working beforehand. We had family support around us that helped with various sort of days out and various kind of just childcare moments. But so there was a good support around us. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think just he's fairly resilient. We've had times where we've cried in front of him, just because
Mm.
we were having a crap day or things weren't quite right, and he was there. And it's amazing how children just, well, he certainly just comes up and he doesn't laugh, but he smiles if you're crying, and I'm sure that's them just trying to make you happy and trying to
Yeah.
stop you being sad. And then later on, you know, developed into 3 and more aware of stuff. He's, asking where, you know, somebody has a baby brother or a baby sister, or he would like one. And, that's just quite hard for especially Clemmie to take. It's quite a hard one just to explain anyway
Yeah.
to a 3.
Get your head. Yeah. It's hard enough for a 30-something-year-old to get your head around, let alone a 3-year-old. So
Yeah. So I mean, and post after Phoebe dying, as I said, actually looking after him and making sure that he was there. It was an absolute godsend that, I had to get up. I had to go and do the nursery run. I had to go and pick him up. We had to have food. At weekends, we had to have plans, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it gives you, throughout the whole thing, the whole uh, pregnancy, the grief and the Phoebe's death, and post, and even now, your purpose is something in life, is something that I think is just so important. And um, it's changed through all those sorts of things, but it's recognizing what your purpose is, and it really does keep you going.
we were talking earlier about the work of Tommy's and the work of Born, so the charity that you mentioned,
Mm.
and the importance of sort of finding out about these things so that people can have the answers. How, and I guess you also mentioned there Felix asking about him liking to have a little brother or a little sister. How do you and Clemmie now, a year and a bit on, so still very, very recent history for you
Mm.
guys, and probably never history really is part of who you are as a family. How do you look forward to potentially having another, or not? Is that something that you're able to get your heads around?
Yeah, yeah, I mean, it's, it's definitely something that can be, and I was quite keen to kind of still push on with. I think Clemmie had a really tough time in that. So Phoebe died on the 12th of January, um, and then a father died 2 weeks later on the 26th of January. So obviously in between those two periods, I mean, it was amazing that she got to to go and see him again. And saw both of us before he passed. But again, the grief of having your daughter and then your father die within 2 weeks I just don't know how she coped. And then just being there for her mother and her brother, it's just unbelievable, really. And then sort of but throughout this whole thing, and right up until my dad's funeral, so kind of towards the end of February, you're still bleeding, which is just, again, just a horrible reminder about what the previous sort of 2 months were all about. And eventually she went back into Tommy's, and they had to do a procedure on her. She had some kind of remaining tissue in her.
This is Tommy's the hospital.
Sorry,
not
sorry.
charity. Yeah.
Sorry, St. Thomas's. She had to go into St. Thomas's. Yeah, she had to get her. She had to go through a procedure to remove this placentile tissue, basically still in her room, try and stop bleeding. And during the procedure, unfortunately, she started bleeding heavily. And once she was out, she was in recovery, but still bleeding like at extreme levels. And they somehow her uterus had burst or had ruptured in a place, and she actually lost something like 4 pints of blood, which is half of her blood, and was seriously not well. So with all that happening, and they stitched her up, was basically we weren't allowed to try, or we were recommended not to try to have another baby for a year whilst her uterus healed. Again, they don't know why. They can't see really. They can do a few scans. They did go in to check that she's okay, but it's only really around March, April time where this year in 2026 where we can start considering trying again. So it's been at times a long 12 months to get here.
It's a hell of an ordeal all in, really, isn't it? Yours is obviously a case where it's a very significant event and has long lasting effects. But in any case, I think I've said it before, a miscarriage isn't something that or a loss of a baby isn't something that just happens and then you move on and go again. These things, they're serious. It's a medical emergency.
Yeah.
And with Clemmie's ongoing health complications and her dad dying as well, I just can't. What a tough time. I think it's another chapter in the book of why women are better than us. It's just some of the things that they are able to bear and move on from is just
I think
to me it's phenomenal.
Yes, she's phenomenal. I just don't. It was a horror 3 months basically. It sort of got to April, and you were like, what was going to happen next, if you like, because it just nothing good really happened in that time.
Yeah, because it echoes back to the conversation we had with Annabelle, the NICU episode that we did in Oxfordshire, and with Edwina a couple of weeks ago, who they've now stopped trying for a second. And it's not just that question of, do we want to have another pregnancy? Is the pregnancy going to be successful? It's, what effect could this have on my wife?
Yeah.
Do we want to risk her health and her well-being? So it's incredibly complex, and as you say, in some cases, little understood area of medicine. In some cases, I guess they're much better understood than it was. This is one thing that I always, people talk about having home births. And whenever I mention someone suggests that they want to have a home birth, I'm like, you are a lunatic. I don't, this is perhaps a bit too political for this podcast where we try and remain fairly neutral, but women 100 years ago would have, well, perhaps 150 years ago now, but would have begged for the opportunity to be in a hospital like we have these days.
Yeah.
Because without,
I think being near love, being near everything, I just completely agree with, I respect everyone's views on where it should or shouldn't give birth, but I would never not choose a hospital now.
But again, I think it goes back to what you mentioned earlier, and something we speak about a lot, is it's until you're aware of what can go wrong, you're not aware at all of what can go wrong.
Absolutely,
Um,
absolutely, yeah.
so that's what we're trying to beat down those walls, make people what could happen without being doomsayers. It's only just been in the last couple of weeks, couple of month or so. I'm sure you've been thinking about it, but it's only really in the last month or so that you're perhaps in a position to start to press on.
Yeah, we are. I mean, um, we've actually gone down the IVF route as well, because again, there was just for other reasons that
Yeah, sure.
we needed to go down the IVF route. So the year off, we managed to do all the egg collections, which again, I mean, you just said that uh, much better than men. It's probably true because the roller coaster of just egg collecting
Yeah,
is unreal. And again, what they put their bodies through in terms of the drugs and then the mind through in terms of the emotion and the outcome and the hope and the disappointment and all these things is just crazy.
yeah.
So we took the year off to try and get us best prepared rather than just let the clock run down, which is we thought was a sensible moment. And so at least the 12 months that we had off or that Emmy was recovering, we were sort of felt like we were moving forward. It wasn't just clock
Yeah, of
watching.
course.
So helpful in some respects not, because the agenda was always on the table, always on the mind. Can't really move away from it. So yeah, we're there or thereabouts, and we're sort of now in the other horrible world of the other part of IVF, which is a roller coaster as well. So that's sort of
You
where
are
we are.
now at a point where you can move forward, and is that an exciting moment? Is that a terrifying moment?
I think it's not. I don't think it's exciting. I think we're both really scared. If I'm being honest, it's not, and it's not because of the hopeful eventual outcome. It's the 9 months in between. If it happens, and if it doesn't happen, then you know that's that's something else to deal with. But again, I say how lucky we are to have Felix. So you know to have one really healthy smiley fun boy is an absolute gift. And even though he makes me so angry sometimes, I always need to remind myself of that.
Well, obviously, I'm sure I won't be the only one listening to this, but as a friend of yours, we in particular hope that the next however many months are a success. Ultimately,
Thanks,
as you say,
appreciate
it's
it.
comes with its challenges. Speaking of challenges, you've taken on a couple already, actually, and this sort of leads on to what we mentioned earlier about Bobby's roundabout route into marathons and miracles. But you've outdone me really already last year in your fundraising efforts. What did you get up to last year?
Yeah, so again, it comes back to that purpose. I had some time off work in the first sort of quarter of the year, and as I said, you get into a routine even then, but you sort of realize that you need a purpose or you want to have a purpose. And my purpose was, lots of things, but I just wanted to do something that really made um when Phoebe, like I how could I honor Phoebe? How could I make her proud?
Yeah.
And the things that I had in my head was just doing really good that for Felix and her brother. And so that was the big driver. But the second thing is, if I'm ever gonna basically just do something to stop premature birth or try to stop premature birth or pregnancy issues or whatever it was, and try and if there was ever going to be a time to try and raise some money. And at the time thought it was all about money. And I actually think your challenge is way outdoing mine because it's more about awareness. It's more about people knowing about it and wanting to do something about it. Of course, every pound helps as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I decided I'm not a runner. I don't enjoy running, so I decided to sign up to the Great North Run up in Newcastle because I know lots of people have done it. I used to live in Newcastle. I love Newcastle as a city. I went to uni there, worked there. My sister still lives there. My dad's from there. My family are from there. I thought I'd do a half marathon, and then I thought it was quite nice that the Great South Run is in Portsmouth, which is where I'm born, and probably the closest city to where my parents live, and I was Jazz. So I did that. I think they're about 6 weeks apart, and I was fortunate enough to raise with gift aids £22,000 from a lot of generous people out there who wanted to
which
do
is
their bit.
phenomenal. Which is phenomenal. And I have to say, you also did it in about 2 weeks from memory. It sort of went from naught to everything in such a short space of time. And it's it was incredible fundraising effort. So well done on that.
Thank you.
But it also meant, we started putting this challenge together in May of last year. So just before Romeo and I went on our honeymoon. You were sort of, obviously, as I said before, your and Clemmie's story was the last straw, I guess, that made me want to do the challenge. So you were naturally one of the first people I wanted to ask if you wanted to be involved. But in all honesty, because it was May and you'd lost Phoebe in January, Amy and I spoke about it and we thought, you know what, it's a bit too soon. We hadn't seen much of you guys. We hadn't, Amy and Clemmie, I think, had been texting a bit, but we didn't really know quite where you were, space wise and what. So left it and got going and got a few in, and then I think I spoke to you in the end in sort of maybe July time, end of June, start of July, and you said I would, but I'm actually already doing this. And we were like, oh, we missed the boat. Your 2 runs were fantastic and were for very good reason and for in the locations that you did. But actually, when I spoke to you then, you said to me, I'm doing the Great North Run and the Great South Run. And once I've done that, I'm never going running ever again.
Yeah. I do feel bad for the people that very kind donations that I got last year, obviously, to get £22,000, because I promised people this would be the only time I asked for any money, and then of course, and because I'm never doing this again, I'm never running. I remember in a slightly different way, a sheepish way, that in July you asked me, and it wasn't anything to do with the challenge. It was just like, there's no way I'm doing a marathon. There's no way in hell. I was finding the training for a half marathon so abysmal. I was just like, no, it's an amazing thing what you're doing, Ollie. No. And actually, I regret saying no to you at the time. And I wish I'd signed up from day one, but you got me eventually.
Got there in the end. Yeah. we reached a point sort of in January, February this year when we got going, where I started getting increasing number of messages from Bobby sort of saying, well, if someone, I'll come and join you for one, or maybe if someone drops out, then we'll see if we can make it work. And in the end, we were due to be running Brighton with Bex, who's one of the founders of the Worst Girl Gang Ever, who are obviously a fantastic now charity within the miscarriage space, and Bex has sadly had to drop out, but we are hoping that we will see her on the day. She'll be there.
Great.
I think they've got some people running for them, and it's Bex's sort of local marathon, so hopefully she'll be around. But it meant that Bobby, who, as you mentioned, military upbringing, I think, is that right?
Yeah, Dad was Royal Navy.
Yeah, so dotted around a bit. So
yeah, but the family home. So it was quite, when you said it was the Sussex leg, I was like, yeah, the stars are aligning a bit here. I really
Yeah,
can't say no. So yeah, parents live in West Sussex now.
there you go. One of those
It was
people.
my family home, so I sort of had to do
We
it.
can slot you in anywhere, but it has it's worked out in the end. So despite your early trepidation, I think you are a runner now, Bobby.
I'm not. I'm not. Do you know what? A lot of it's in the head. I've learned pretty much all running is in the head. And one thing I've learned, I am mentally weak because I hate running. I hate doing it. And so on Sunday, I think you're going to find that out. You'll probably. I'll just warn you now. I will be really grumpy all day until it's over.
Even with thousands of people around and lots of support. I mean, this is
Yeah,
the only way you run, though, isn't it? Because
yeah,
Great North Run's huge, and we came down to see you at the Great South Run, and it was
yeah.
a disgusting day. That was.
It was.
It rained all day, but there were still loads of people around, and
Yeah, it was. That was good.
this is my
Yeah.
first taste of like a big run. So I'm really excited. So I'm probably going to be.
Oh, you're excited.
I'm going to be like, you might as well go with Felix. It's going to be like having a toddler with you.
Yeah. Just saying your expectations, I will be grumpy. So I'm sure we'll be fine. We'll yin and yang.
Yin and yang, absolutely.
Nice
Absolutely.
balance.
But the training runs look to have been going well, and I think there's a hint of excitement in there somewhere.
Somewhere.
A dark corner.
We'll find it.
You'll find it.
We'll find it at about mile 20, I think.
Yeah, let's hope so. That's the boy when you need it. So let's hope it appears then. But no, it's going to be a great day out. We're obviously really excited as a family to see you guys. I haven't seen anyone for the last few months, unless you happen to have run a marathon with us. So that's going to be great. And Brighton is billed to be a fantastic marathon. I want to obviously not run, but Tommy's have a big presence there. It's one of their two sort of big events for the year outside of the Landmarks Half, which was it's on the same day. Landmarks Half is on the same day. So yeah, they have a good squad out. So there'll be lots of pink shirts and hopefully lots of support. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Should be good.
It should be good. Bobby, as ever, thank you for sharing that. It's incredibly tough topics to talk about and tough memories to drag up. So I really do appreciate it. And as ever, sort of very humbled that people trust me with these stories and these thoughts and memories. So it's been a real privilege talking to you, and hopefully we'll get you around on Sunday.
And can I just thank you for what you're doing? It's as I said, it's more about the awareness for me now. I realise that, and what you're doing is phenomenal in these podcasts, in these whatever it is, and raising a shed ton of money and running 39 marathons. So thank you, and thank you for I'm happy to talk about this in this environment, and it's been a long time since I have really told it in detail. So it's good to talk about it because I miss Phoebe and I wish she was here.
We'll do a proud of the weekend.
Yeah, nice one.
All right, mate. I'll see you then.
Take care.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bobby.